The Grand John estate was alive with laughter and conversation. The long dining table adorned with golden rimmed plates and an extravagant floral centerpiece was surrounded by Jungkook's family and close friends. The warm ambience made everything feel picture perfect except for the one thing that had been bothering you for weeks. Tonight was special. You and Jungkook had been planning this moment carefully. The announcement that you were ready to start a family. It had been 3 years since you married him. 3 years of an intense, passionate, and unwavering love. Despite the power and status that came with being John Jungkook's wife, your love remained the foundation of your relationship. Jungkook sat beside you, his hand resting on your thigh beneath the table, occasionally squeezing it to remind you he was there. His presence was always grounding. Across from you sat his so-called best friend Haeun. You weren't one to feel insecure, especially not when it came to your husband. Jungkook was a one-woman man, and that woman was you. But lately, you had noticed the way Haeun lingered a little too long, her touch on his arm or shoulder unnecessary and invasive. And the moment you had shared your plans for a baby with Jungkook in private, her behavior had escalated. You weren't one to let things slide, and tonight you would make sure everyone knew. Jungkook's mother, elegant as ever, smiled warmly at you. So, dear, how has work been treating you? I heard your latest campaign was a huge success. You returned her smile. It was thankfully, but I have decided to step back a little. His father, a man of few words, raised an eyebrow. Step back? That's surprising. You love your work. Jungkook cleared his throat, his grip on your thigh tightened slightly in excitement. Actually, we wanted to share some news with everyone tonight. The room quieted. Every pair of eyes was now on you. Jungkook gave you a reassuring nod and you took a deep breath before smiling. We are planning to have our first baby. A mixture of gasps, cheers, and delighted exclamations filled the room. Jungkook's mother clasped her hands together. Her eyes glistened. That's wonderful news. Oh, a grandchild, finally. Jungkook's brother clapped him on the back. Looks like the John Empire is getting in air sooner than expected. But not everyone looked pleased. Haeun's smile faltered, her fingers tightened around her wine glass. You caught the slight twitch in her jaw, the way her eyes darted towards Jungkook as if she were searching for some reaction that wasn't there. Jungkook, however, was too busy basking in the moment, his gaze fixed lovingly on you. We have been talking about this for a while now, and we are finally ready. You smiled. Haeun let out a small, breathy laugh, leaning forward slightly. Wow, that's fast. I mean, I just didn't expect Jungkook to want to settle down like that. He's always been so career driven. You tilted your head, a slow smile creeping onto your lips. Fast? It's been 3 years since we got married. Haeun, how long should we have waited? Until you gave us permission? She looked at you stunned. Junghyun let out a chuckle but covered his mouth after noticing the tension. Haeun scoffed. That's not what I meant. You are being rude for no reason. Relax, Haeun. You know Haeun is playful. He said, taking your side, having no idea that you weren't being cheerful but straightforward. She gave you a look before looking towards her plate. Mrs. John cleared her throat to lighten the tension. I can't wait, to be honest. I was thinking, when will I carry my grandchildren in my arms? Seems like finally my dream will come true. Thank you, both of you. You both smiled, seeing that priceless smile on her face. Seeing the joy this small announcement had brought to the family made it all the more special. Dinner carried on with conversations flowing smoothly, and soon everyone moved towards the grand living area for drinks and casual chats. You excused yourself to the kitchen, wanting a moment alone to breathe. You loved the John family, but tonight's announcement had stirred something in Haeun, something you weren't going to ignore. Just as you poured yourself a glass of water, you heard soft footsteps. You smiled, thinking it's Jungkook, turning around only to find Haeun instead. She stood at the counter, running her fingers over a bottle of wine as if deep in thought. Then she turned to you, a small smirk playing on her lips. You really don't waste time, do you? Your brows lifted. Excuse me? She let out a soft chuckle, swirling the wine in her glass. Getting pregnant. I suppose it's a good move. Jungkook was already wrapped around your finger, but now you are making sure he stays that way forever. You inhaled sharply, a slow, knowing smile curving your lips. You say that as if he ever belonged to anyone else. Her jaw clenched for a second before she masked it with a laugh. You misunderstand me. I was just surprised. Jungkook never seemed like the type to rush into things like this. You tilted your head. Funny, he didn't hesitate when we decided on it. In fact, he was eager. She stared at you, her nails slightly tapping against the counter before she sighed, shaking her head. Well, good luck then. With that, she walked off, but something about the way she carried herself told you she wasn't done. Later that night, you found yourself in the grand hallway on your way back to your room. When you heard Jungkook's voice from down the hall, his tone was confused. Are you okay? Your heart clenched. You followed the sound and turned the corner just in time to see Haeun standing close to him, her hand lightly gripping his sleeve. Her lips trembled as she let out a small sigh. I don't know, I think I drank too much. My head feels light. Jungkook frowned, stepping back slightly. You should rest then. She bit her lip, looking up at him through long lashes. Would you mind walking me to my room? I don't want to fall. You clenched your fist. Jungkook hesitated, his gaze flickering past her for a second before he nodded. All right, just to make sure you don't collapse. As he walked her towards her room, your blood boiled. You weren't the insecure type, but this was deliberate. She knew exactly what she was doing, not on your watch. Before she could close the door behind them, you stepped forward. Your voice was sweet yet sharp. Oh, Jungkook love, there you are. His head snapped towards you, his lips parting slightly at your sudden presence. Haeun stiffened. You walked up to them, your eyes locking onto hers with a knowing look. I was waiting for you. Jungkook immediately turned to you, his expression softened. I was just making sure Haeun got to her room. You hummed, eyes still on Haeun. That's sweet of you, but we wouldn't want to cause a misunderstanding, would we? Haeun swallowed hard. Jungkook frowned slightly, glancing between you two before realization dawned in his eyes. His jaw clenched as he took a step back from her. You are right. Turning to Haeun, he added, you should rest now. Although Jungkook never saw Haeun more than a friend, he never wanted to create any misunderstanding that hurt you. And just like that, he walked past her and reached for your hand, intertwining his fingers with yours. Haeun said nothing. She only watched as Jungkook led you away, his attention fully on you. You didn't even need to say another word. Tonight, the message had been received louder and clear. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a soft glow on Jungkook's face. His arm was lazily draped over your waist, his bare skin warm against yours. His long lashes rested peacefully, and for a moment you allowed yourself to admire him. His sharp, defined features seemed softer in sleep, a stark contrast to the intense man you knew. Your mind drifted, recalling how things had started between you two, how fate had thrown you into his life, how the lines between resistance and desire blurred until there was no turning back. A slow smirk played on your lips. He was yours now. No one could change that. Carefully, you slipped out of bed, making sure not to wake him. Stretching your arms, you exhaled before making your way to the guest room where You had unfinished business. Pushing the door open without knocking, you found Haeun sitting on the bed, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, surprised for a split second, before her expression shifted into an annoyed frown. You were up early. Did you sleep well? You asked innocently, but she only got more irritated knowing you are doing that on purpose. Ever heard of knocking? She muttered, crossing her arms. You leaned against the door frame, arms folded, your smirk never faltering. Good morning to you too. Your voice was laced with sarcasm. Oh, but wait, you are suddenly concerned about privacy? You let out a fake gasp. That's rich considering some guests don't seem to understand what privacy and boundaries mean themselves. Her frown deepened. Excuse me. You stepped inside, slow and deliberate. You see, most guests understand that when a man is married, they should keep their distance, respect boundaries, but then there are some who don't mind hovering a little too close. You gave her a pointed look, so I assumed privacy isn't something they care about either, which is why I didn't bother knocking. Her jaw clenched, but instead of backing down, she scoffed, as if I don't know what you have done to be with him. Everyone knows you played your cards well. Don't act so righteous. You let out a small laugh, tilting your head, and yet here I am, his wife, a happily married woman. I have no regrets. You took a step closer, your tone dropping. But let me make something clear to you. She held her ground, but you could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. If you think Jungkook will choose you over me just because you have known him longer, then you are delusional. You crossed your arms, voice sharp. Let me tell you something. If I wanted, I could remove you from his life completely. If I so much as whisper a word to him about you, about how you are trying to make it seem like you have a chance, he wouldn't just throw you out of this house, he would cut you off for good. Her eyes widened slightly, but she masked it with a forced smirk. You think you have that much control over him? Your smirk didn't waver. Oh, you want to know? You leaned in just enough to make your presence suffocating. So, if you value your so called friendship, I would suggest you to stay in your limits. Otherwise, you trailed off, letting the unspoken threat hang in the air. Her expression twisted in frustration, but she didn't have a comeback. She knew you weren't bluffing. Satisfied, you turned on your heel and walked out of the room, leaving her to stew in her own bitterness. This wasn't just a warning, it was a promise, and she was aware what you were capable of. Jungkook believes everything you say blindly. That's how much he trusts you. You walked back into your room, feeling the weight of the conversation with Haeun still lingering in your mind. The tension was thick, but you could also feel a strange sense of relief. You had made it clear, and it felt good to take control, to show her that nothing, absolutely nothing, could come between you and Jungkook. As you stepped into the room, the atmosphere felt different. The door closed softly behind you, and for a second you didn't hear a thing. Then a familiar warmth and the scent of him surrounded you in an instant. Two strong arms encircled your waist from behind, pulling you close to a firm chest, his warmth enveloping you completely. A soft chuckle escaped his lips, the kind that always made your heart flutter. Where did you leave me so early in the morning, A smile tugged at your lips as you felt his breath tickling your skin. Jungkook tightened his hold around you, nuzzling his face into the crook of your neck. His warmth, his scent, everything about him was intoxicating. I just went to check on something, you murmured, resting your hands over his. Jungkook hummed, his lips brushing against your skin, sending shivers down your spine. Without waking me up, he feigned hurt, his tone playful but laced with possessiveness. You look so peaceful while sleeping, you teased. I didn't want to disturb you. Jungkook scoffed softly, turning you around to face him. His dark eyes studied you intensely, searching for something beyond your words. Liar, he whispered, lifting your chin with his fingers. You never leave my side in the morning. What happened? For a moment you hesitated. The memory of your conversation with Haeun lingered in your mind, but you didn't want to ruin this moment with her negativity. You already handled it. It's nothing, you muttered. Jungkook tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. Why? Tell me. His voice was firm yet gentle, his thumb brushing against your cheek. You sighed, looking away. It's just, some people don't understand boundaries. Jungkook's jaw tightened slightly, his expression darkening. He knew exactly who you were talking about. Is it about Haeun? Did she say something to you? You bit your lip, contemplating whether to tell him, but then you shook your head. Not anything worth worrying about. I handled it. Jungkook studied you for a moment before sighing. You know, you don't have to deal with things alone, right? His voice softened as he cupped your face. I told you before, I'll always protect you. Your heart swelled at his words. I know, and that's why I'm not afraid of anything. A small smirk played on Jungkook's lips. That's my girl. He leaned in, capturing your lips in a slow, tender kiss. His hands slid down to your waist, pulling you impossibly closer. You melted into him, the warmth of his lips igniting something deep within you. The kiss was soft yet demanding, as if he needed to remind you that you were his, that nothing and no one could come between you. When he finally pulled away, he rested his forehead against yours. His breath was heavy. You taste like trouble, he muttered, his fingers tracing circles on your waist. You giggled, wrapping your arms around his neck, and you taste like home. Jungkook groaned playfully. Damn it, fine. How do you always win? You smirked, tilting your head. Because you let me. He let out a low chuckle before suddenly lifting you into his arms, making you yelp. Jungkook, put me down. Not happening, baby, he murmured, carrying you towards the bed. You woke up too early and left me alone. Now I need to make up for lost time. You blushed as he gently laid you down, hovering over you, his gaze dark with mischief and adoration. His fingers trailed down your arm before intertwining with yours. Tell me again, he whispered, his lips ghosting over yours, that you are mine. Your heart pounded as you whispered back, I'm yours, Jungkook. A slow, satisfied smile spread across his face before he captured your lips once more, sealing his claim on you in the most breathtaking way. The soft clinking of dishes and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the John family dining hall as the maids set up the breakfast table. Mr. and Mrs. John were already seated, sipping their tea while Jungin scrolled through his phone. Jungkook had just walked in, his black dress shirt half buttoned, sleeves rolled up as he adjusted his cufflinks. You stepped towards him with a smirk, reaching for his tie. Let me. Your fingers skillfully looped the fabric, adjusting the knot to perfection. Jungkook grinned, his hands resting lightly on your waist as he leaned down slightly. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Of course, my husband should look perfect. You smoothed down his collar, your fingers lingered for a moment. Jungin coughed. We are trying to eat here. Can you not flirt right in front of us? Jungkook scoffed. Then don't look. Mrs. John chuckled, clearly enjoying the banter. I love seeing you both like this, such a beautiful couple. Before you could respond, the sound of dragging luggage echoed through the hall. Everyone turned towards the staircase. Haeun was coming down, her suitcase rolling behind her. Her usual cheerful expression was gone, replaced by something unreadable. Suppressing a satisfied smile, you tilted your head. Oh, you are leaving? There was a slight pause before she responded, her lips pressing together. Yes. Her tone was clipped, but she had caught the sarcasm in your voice. Mrs. John frowned slightly. At least have breakfast with us, dear. There's no rush. Haeun forced a smile. Thank you, Auntie, but I would rather leave now. She turned slightly, her eyes flickering towards Jungkook as if waiting for him to say something. You didn't miss the look, and just because you could, you subtly slid your arm through Jungkook's, resting your head against his shoulder. Jungkook didn't even hesitate. He smiled down at you, his hand covering yours in an affectionate squeeze. Drive safe, Haeun. You almost felt bad at how quickly her expression soured, almost. With nothing else left to say, she turned and walked towards the entrance. The staff opened the door for her, and with one last glance back, she left. Junghyun let out a dramatic sigh. Well, that was awkward. Mrs. John shrugged, sipping her tea. Maybe she had urgent plans. You exchanged a knowing glance with Jungkook but said nothing. Instead, you simply reached for his coffee cup, taking a sip before handing it back to him with a smirk. Jungkook chuckled, leaning down to whisper, You really enjoyed that, didn't you? You smiled, whispering back, I just love reminding people what's mine.